Tonight, we introduce you to one of Baton Rouge's most giving citizens who is re-entering politics. We'll talk about recruiting at Baton Rouge Police, and the superintendent is here to talk about buses, cafeteria workers, and what's ahead. Roll it, Kyle. Well, you know how hot it's been outside lately, but that's not the hottest topic in East Baton Rouge Parish right now. It involves our most precious resource, our kids, and what's happening at the East Baton Rouge Parish school system. The head man there, Dr. Cito Narcisse, superintendent of schools, is here with us to talk about what's going on. So everybody already knows the backstory that there's been issues with buses, and you have been in dialogue with bus drivers, and then we'll get to the cafeteria staff thing in a minute. But let's talk about this. How did it get this bad?
Yeah, so the reality is the school system haven't done a great job on transportation plans since 2006.
Okay.
So we haven't been purchasing buses. We haven't been, getting our fleet ready. And so what has happened is anytime that we would get a bus, the only time we ever had a plan to get buses was through a grant. Okay. So if we didn't get a grant, we wouldn't do anything.
Yeah.
And so the system has been able to get away with that over time. And so, as I tell folks, there's always a breaking point.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening is now we have buses
yeah.
that don't work.
Yeah.
We have a fleet just about 500, but 200 of the buses don't work. We also have, just like every other district in the nation, we have vacancies. We have 161 vacancies. I mean, just yesterday, the New York Post and Fox Business News wrote about, us in Kansas City and Chicago and all of them having the same set of problems. And so, we have to figure out ways to not only retain bus drivers that come in our system, but also have buses working to pick up all the children in Baton Rouge.
So, down 100 bus drivers. Mm-hmm. Did nobody notice a problem when it was down 15? 20, 25?
Yeah, so it was actually, the dip started right after COVID. So we were probably just about 600 and it went down to 400 and it just keep going down. Yeah. And in some way, shape or form, as we were continuing to review, it almost became, well, okay, if we can't have bus drivers, then let's worry about trailers. And those are extra drivers to pick up. And so the system just compensated. So as we saw the numbers going down, we started to say, how do we keep recruiting? Yeah. How do we get more bus drivers to get CDL licensed faster? And so that's when it started to exacerbate. And the unfortunate part is, the reality is, we didn't put a lot of focus on transportation.
Why? But that's the question.
That's correct.
You're coming off the summer. From May to August, how could this still be a problem?
Yeah, well, I mean, the problems that we can't solve is, the issue we have is a supply and demand issue, right? Okay. So it's twofold. So it's not necessarily just having buses to drive, but drivers to bring in. And that shortage is happening all over the state. I mean, I talk to my colleagues in Jefferson Parish or Shreveport, other districts that are just similar size as us, and other parishes across the state, and everybody can't hire enough bus drivers, especially when you have a district that has, 40,000 plus students and with all this complexity of choices and stuff. So that became more exacerbated because of supply and demand. Right now, we've had paying for vendors and leasing buses to get buses, but nobody can sell it to us.
But it appeared your district looked unprepared for this. It was not a good look. And so what would you say to parents who quite frankly are pissed off right now because they're having to adjust their schedules based upon this, and that they should have had more warning before the beginning of the year that this stuff was going to happen? What do you say to them?
Yeah, well, I tell folks I take full responsibility. I'm the superintendent, the buck stops with me. There are breakdowns that happen that were as a part of our fault in terms of notifying parents, but that still wouldn't have solved our problem.
Sure.
Right, and I think that what I'm trying to frame to people is that is the challenge that we had. Right now we run a bus system that has 2 tiers. So either you're picked up in the morning at around 7 a.m. to go to school.
Some kids are catching the bus at 5:30.
Yeah, and that's if you're going to what they call a transfer, right?
Okay.
So a transfer site is where a child will come from one part of the parish, go to a transfer site to go to another school, right?
Okay.
Especially if it's a school of choice, because our kids get to choose schools all around the city. And so that is a complexity, and that was happening with elementary kids, and we wanted to move away from that. So we said, let's not have elementary transfers, let's do it for older kids because it's easier for that.
You do have a solution that we're going to talk about here in terms of the schedule. And before we go into break, flat out, do you have, and we'll get into what it is, do you have a solution?
Absolutely.
And do you believe that it is a solution that is a quick fix or a long-term solution?
I think it's a quick fix, and more importantly, it picks up every child, right? Because we have what they call a math problem, and we have a solution to that.
All right, Dr. Cito Narcisse is here with us for another segment. We'll hear what his solution is. I want to ask him about his contract and how did what happened in Florida impact what's been going on in Baton Rouge. We'll talk about that with Dr. Narcisse, and we'll talk with BRPD about their recruiting efforts. And like I said, one of Baton Rouge's most giving citizens is getting back into politics. I don't know why she's doing it, but we'll ask her about it coming up in the show. Y'all stay right there. All right, so Dr. Narcisse says he has a solution to this bus conundrum. Spill it.
Yeah, so what we're going to do is something that's different for Baton Rouge. As you know, we are very historical here. So we've always run buses by 2 tiers. And so I tell folks we have a math problem, right? We have X number of bus drivers and X number of routes, way more routes than bus drivers can hold. So what we have to do is do what they call 3 tiers. 3 tiers mean 3 different rotations to allow much more efficiency and for making sure every kid across the city gets picked up. So what our goal is that we're going to start high schools, parochial schools, because we also take parochial school buses, early as 7 a.m. That time won't change because most high school kids go to school at that time. In our 2nd tier, we're actually going to do all middle schools.
Okay.
And then in our 3rd tier, we will have a set of elementary schools that we do.
Which will start at what time?
And those elementary schools will start at 9.
And then, so 7 o'clock?
7 o'clock, 8 o'clock time, and then we'll have a 9 o'clock time.
What about dismissal?
And dismissal, so for dismissal, we have the same set of hours. Dismissal will be 2:15 for high schools. The 8 o'clock won't be 3:25 for middle schools, and then for elementary schools it'll be at 4 o'clock. So that's going to be the change. So it's really a 35-40-minute change. And the reason we have it that way is what people don't see is when people pick up buses, they pick it up by patterns, right? And it's proximity. And so there's a whole logic behind that. By doing more tiers, you can actually cover mostly all the routes. And when you cover all the routes, every child is not missed. Right now, with our current model, the reason we had to make an adjustment to the schedule is not every child gets picked up. There are buses that miss spots. And so where the adjustment...
How's that possible?
Well, I mean, if you don't have enough bus drivers to run enough routes, then the challenge is you have to depend on bus drivers running like 8, 9 routes, and that's impossible. So that means they're doing even extra than what they usually do, because usually the average route should be around about 5 to 6 routes for a bus driver. If you do that, then you do it more efficiently. But what this will do is it'll actually give us more bus drivers to cover more routes and more opportunities to get to buses when you need to fix them. So it's almost like I tell people it's a math problem, right? So what you're doing is you're condensing the amount of routes because you have more opportunities for rotation.
So, all right, how soon will this go into effect?
All right, so the big thing is tonight, the board
has to approve it?
They have to approve me to change start times.
Okay.
Once they approve that, the next day we have our set of communications. We're going to give parents a week out to prepare for the adjustment, so we'll keep the current schedule we have now.
Before or after Labor Day?
So after Labor Day. So the day after Labor Day is our D-Day. That's when we begin to start the new routes.
All right, so here's a question for you, as someone in the studio has a cell phone going. Did Broward distract you from the work here?
Yeah, absolutely not. Broward did not distract me from the work here. I went through the process, and it didn't work out, but I'm here, so the work still continues. So I know people try to make that there, but that's not the issue on why we have our challenge that we have here.
How did that come about anyway? I mean, because that was one of the sticking points for people, is that people didn't realize you were interested in being someplace else because you have a contract discussion going on.
That's correct. I have a contract discussion. The reality is, I tell folks I'm a father before a superintendent. And I made a request to one to stay, and we didn't get to a point at that time to discuss my contract. And so as you get close to the end of my contract, I have to be thinking about my family. And so that's how I got into that.
Why should the board extend you?
Well, I would say, well, one, I want to be here. But the second part is, you can't keep changing superintendents and expect results. I mean, I would argue that out of all superintendents that have been here, I'm trying to fix challenges that have been here for a long time, and I'm not scared to face them, right? And so I think that we have to be able to be honest, to be able to face those issues, and you want to have consistency, because I have a plan. When you look at our pathways plan, early childhood expansions, I like to see that pathway through. And I think we have a board that's willing to tackle those tough plans as well.
I do want to, before we wrap the segment, I want to ask about the issue with cafeteria staff, because there were some questions about that. What's going on with that, and what are your solutions?
Yeah, so we've given a cafeteria staff an increase in terms of what they're doing, the work. The board and I've been working very hard trying to make sure that we're paying people right. And I told folks the way that we've been looking at it is that we have to do a three-year run, which is to be able to strategically look at our budget over time. So in 3 years, we can be able to pay all of our employees. But we have to be strategic that way, because there's so many moving pieces that happens in the budget. And in that process, I had a meeting with all the cafeteria workers, all of them. We met at Glen Oaks High School, had a conversation. We talked about changes and shifts, and they were pretty happy. And they are the USDOE has said, like, we have one of the best cafeteria child nutrition program in the country, right?
Yeah.
And so people don't know about that. So we're working hard on that.
Got about a minute left. When are you rescheduling your State of the District for?
Yeah, so we're going to be pushing that out until later September. Unfortunately, as you know, with everything with transportation, we said this is not the best time to do that, because we have a lot of great things that are going on in East Baton Rouge, but right now we got to solve this particular problem. So once everything works out well in terms of the vote, we'll be able to get transportation away, and by the end of September, we'll have the State of the Schools, and we'd love for you to be there.
Well, I'll likely be there, and I want you to come here before then so we could talk again.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Narcisse.
Thank you so much.
Back with a member of Baton Rouge Police Department to talk about recruiting efforts there. We just got through a summer where actually homicide was down in East Baton Rouge Parish. We'll talk with Detective McCoy, Sergeant McCoy. I don't give him a promotion on the show next. Sergeant Roderick McCoy, all in his fresh Class A, is here on set with us to talk about the recruiting efforts at the Baton Rouge Police Department. Been in that role, you told me just before the segment, about 4 months.
Correct.
It's a big job.
It is.
It's a big job. So let's talk about, you graduated in academy, what, about a month ago?
We graduated a 14-man academy about a month ago.
Yeah, about a month ago, and are in the process of recruiting now. The basic question, why should someone want to be a Baton Rouge police officer?
Because we want to elevate public service, and I know that people here care about their community. So this is an opportunity for people to serve. It's an opportunity for people to give back and make the neighborhoods and the places they live and worship a better place.
It's interesting. I said something going into the break that most people don't think about, but homicides were actually down during the summer, and now you can say it out loud because we're, and hoping to keep it down. The
Absolutely.
chief has talked about that, and a large part of that has been investment in the community, which we could do a lot better job of, but also the work that y'all are doing on the streets. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, we are trying to bridge the gap between the police department and the community. We're people too, we're of the community, so we want to get our faces out there and personalize and humanize the badge and let people know that we're citizens as well.
Right.
This is the uniform, this is what we do, this is not who we are.
Right.
So that's my overarching thought process as far as what we want to project to the citizens of Baton Rouge is we are Baton Rouge.
One of the interesting things about the graduation, and I've been to, I don't know, the last maybe 10 or so, is you had a class that's mostly minority, and there was a large number of African-American females
Absolutely.
Who have become police officers. The department is more diverse than I think people would think.
Absolutely. Our goal is to mirror our constituents.
Yeah.
So our citizen pool should match our police department.
Right.
So representation matters, and it takes all types of personnel to do this job. So all of those different people bring different things to the table, and we welcome them.
The green elephant in the room is the money, man.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that. How are you trying to be competitive to get either lateral officers to come over or young folks to decide to be officers?
So right now, I'm gonna let you.
Look at that camera right there.
Right now, $15,000 for lateral officers. $15,000.
All right.
We have a $8,000 dispatcher bonus for our communications officers and $10,000 bonus for our basic police officers. So, I mean, that's on top of the salary and the willingness to give and give and receive.
What about young people coming in? I mean, one of the things that I've noticed in time working with the department is the various areas in the department where there are people with undergraduate and advanced degrees working in the department. Talk about that.
Absolutely. We champion education. We champion the diversity of having a degree. We encourage it, and we compensate for it.
Yeah. And so what are the qualifications? What is someone, if someone says, look, I want to go to gobrpd.com, spelled like we spell it down here, and find out about this because I want to apply, what's the process?
Okay. First thing, you go to gobrpd.com, and get some information on what the steps are. Our first step in our process is to take a civil service test. That can be offered online or in person, depending on your preference. Once you have an active score, you send us that score and we send you a welcome packet. Let you know about our intake documents, our physical assessment. We schedule that for you, let you know that these are our physical fitness standards. If you pass that, we put you in front of the oral interview board. If they approve you, then psychological.
What happens in the oral interview board?
So basically, it's a job application. So they go over your resume, they go over what we find in your background. They ask you questions. They try to judge your character, if you see if you would make a good police officer. And if the board approves you, then you go to background check matrix, which is our psychological exam and our lie detector. And if you pass that and a drug screening, then we offer you an opportunity to be employed.
Well, you can learn more about this at gobrpd.com, and you might have a chance to meet Sergeant McCoy and talk with them about serving among some of the finest police officers in the country at the Baton Rouge Police Department. I appreciate it, brother. Don't be a stranger.
Oh, no.
It's your first time doing television?
No, not really.
Okay, all right. We'll get him back here. Donna Collins Lewis is in the studio, and she'll talk to you about becoming clerk of court next. Donna Collins Lewis, former city council member, board member at CATS, has done a number of things in the community with nonprofit organizations, and currently on the BREC board as well. Now, she's like me. She doesn't want to sleep either.
Yep, but the Bridge Center for Hope.
Bridge Center for Hope.
Yes.
And now you're a candidate for clerk of court.
Yes.
And this is so interesting. You know, the clerk of court is very integral to what happens with our court system here in East Baton Rouge Parish. Right? Why do you want to do this? You don't have enough to do?
I do have enough to do, Clay, but I just feel called to do this.
Okay.
I ran for the seat 4 years ago, garnered 45% of the vote parish-wide, my first parish-wide race. And I believe that spoke to change. That spoke to the fact that people are looking for different and new leadership. And so I'm out there again offering myself to serve.
So let's talk a little bit about what your leadership would look like.
So I am a servant leader. I consider myself somebody that's always accessible to the public. While I served on the council, I prided myself in being available to my constituents. If somebody called me, I called them back. I'm visible in the community. I'm just a public servant at heart. I want to make sure that when elected to be clerk of court, I'm going to make sure that everyone that walks through the door of that office has a great experience. I want to make sure that the office has 21st century technology. I want to make sure that there's a great working environment for the people that work in that office.
What are some of the, because you mentioned some of the changes, are there, what are the other specific changes you'd like to make if elected clerk of court?
So again, I want to make sure that there's 21st century technology. The clerk's office, is located the main branch downtown. There's a branch over on Airline Highway. There's nothing in the northern part of the parish. It's very hard to get downtown. Want to look at ways and matters where people can access documents online, even if it's a birth certificate. We know that technology advances where we can get things online now so that people don't have to come downtown for everything that they need from the clerk's office.
I was recently in Phoenix with a group and meeting with some of the city leadership there. And it's so interesting you say that. And one of the many things about how they operate that I found so fascinating was their use of technology.
Yes.
and how they kept people from having to get in long lines to come into City Hall and some of these places. Why has that not been more of a priority here?
Because it's the technology, it's the person in the leadership. You have to have those ideas to create innovation within the office. So when elected to office, I want to bring a team in. I want to look at every department within the clerk's office, see where we can advance technology, where we can improve the user experience, because it's all about people that walk through the door. What's the greatest experience that they can have? So if it's my grandmother coming in the clerk's office, I want her to know how to navigate the clerk's office. I'd like to even do a virtual session online where people can look at the clerk's office and know when they come in the door, where they're going, maybe have a navigator in the clerk's office that can direct and guide people to where they're going. But we know today we have our driver's license online. And so why can a person go online, pull up a birth certificate, upload your documents, get a certified copy, print it off, and not have to go down to the clerk's office for every single item that they need or copies?
Yes, please. What else are you hearing from people, or what are you hearing from people on the streets about the office? Because, you know, it's not something that everyone is super educated about. A lot of people don't know what a clerk of court does because they don't have to encounter it on a regular basis, like, say, you know, seeing police officers move around. But
Yes.
what's the community saying to you?
Well, the first time I ran play, people were asking the same question that they're asking me now. What does the clerk's office do?
Okay.
And so one of my goals also, I would host community meetings. I want people to know what's available in the clerk's office. You see every elected official out in the community, engaging the community, talking about the roles of the officers that they serve. So I would host community meetings along with other elected officials. I want people to know the role of the clerk. Other things that people have been asking me, where is the current clerk? So he hasn't been seen. I was invited.
Have y'all done any forums?
We did forums the last 4 years that I ran. The current clerk never showed up at a forum. No forum that I showed up at was the clerk present. I believe that as a public official that we are responsible to our community, that we should show up if we're invited somewhere. I'm not going to assume because I'm a Democrat that Democrats are going to vote for me. I'm going to be out in the public. I'm going to be asking for support, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent, no matter who you are. I believe that that is the responsibility of any elected official to engage with their public.
Well, you know, you talked about it, a great number of court documents that impact a number of different areas are held by that office.
Yes,
It's an
they are.
important office to all parts of East Baton Rouge Parish. If someone watching right now has never seen or heard from you before, what would you want them to know about your leadership style in less than a minute?
My leadership style, one, is I believe in a team effort. So I don't think that I can do anything on an island. So I want to engage every department. I want to talk to supervisors. I want to talk to the public, judges, attorneys. I want to know what it is that they believe can help that office move into the 21st century and be an innovative office. I will be accessible. I will be at work every day, and I will be available to my public.
Where can people learn more about your campaign?
Go to my website, Donna for Clerk of Court. You can Google me, you can search me, my name will pop up. You can call me, 225-439-9690. You can text me, you can email me, I'm available.
Let me stop it before she gives out her social security number next. Next week, we'll talk with BRCC about their leadership summit that's happening in a couple of weeks. You guys have a great weekend. Be safe outside because it's hot as fish grease. See you next week.